Hi, everyone, and welcome to Deadline's virtual Sundance studio. Today, we have the privilege of talking about thriller John in the Hole with director Pasquale Sisto, along with stars Michael C. Hall, Jennifer Ehle, Taissa Farmiga, and Charlie Shotwell. Welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Hey. Great to have you. So, Pasquale, I understand the film came from a short story by Nicolas Jacobon. Can you tell me a little bit about how that piece of work came to you and why this was something you were excited about adapting into a film?
Well, I will first disclose that me and Nico are good friends and we share a lot of creative stuff. Like anytime I do a project, I share it with him, and he's been sharing his scripts and his writing with me often. So it happened, I was in LA at the time, it was around 4 years ago, and he sent me a short story called El Pozo in Spanish, which means the well. That's the literal translation. And it somehow stuck with me in a way that it was very, it had a lot of momentum. When I read it, I was just really immersed in it right away. The short story is in first person, so he describes everything one step at a time, like bullet points. So it had a very bullet point structure that kept moving forward, and we started discussing it more and more, and then it became a screenplay.
Got you. And so I was curious what the first impressions were for the four of you who starred in this film. When you got the script, what excited you about being a part of this project, and what were your thoughts?
It's just it's a wonderful script. It's very. It seemed I loved that it seemed to me very un-North American, and I liked how open-ended it was. It felt. I don't know. My husband, I know when he finished it, he said it's like a poem, and I think that's what moved me about it.
Mm-hmm. And for the three of you,
for me, I thought the script was captivating from the very beginning. I was a bit horrified and a bit uneasy, but yet I couldn't stop thinking about John. And then for me, I saw this boy who was. He was yearning for a connection with his family. He was a boy lost in the confusion of adolescence. And I also actually like how Jennifer said it was a poem. And it felt like there was all these things that felt so definitive, but yet the story itself was, there's too many interpretations you can have. You know what I mean? You can look at John and say, yo, there's something off with him. There's something, mentally unstable. Or you could say, hey, there's this boy here who is looking for something. He needs something. Maybe he's not getting something from his family. Why was his family targeted? I don't know. So for me, I guess, yeah, it's just, I don't know. I like a story. I like a story about a family, especially a family that's perfectly imperfect. And yeah, it made me feel uncomfortable. So I wanted to know more. I wanted to dive deeper into that uncomfortableness.
Yeah. Maybe you guys, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I kind of agree with that. It isn't a lot of scripts that can make you see someone, like a kid, a character who does something so obviously awful, but also still kind of make you weirdly sympathize with him. And you kind of feel bad for John towards the end of the movie, but of course he did this awful thing, and just that interesting duality of having him sort of kind of malicious towards his family, but also just still a kid, which you don't get in a lot of characters.
Yeah. It was interesting too, because it's almost passively malicious. You know what I mean? All of his actions, nothing seems really hard or sharp. He's
I feel it's almost like he's not being evil when he does it, but he's also just not really understanding in a way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, going into this project, was there time for prep and rehearsal? I wonder how you worked through establishing this kind of idiosyncratic family dynamic here.
I think we just did what was on the page and what we were led by Pasquale, because we didn't have any time, did we? I don't remember.
Yeah, no.
No, there wasn't much time. It's sort of luckily working with such talented people, it's easier, but it's kind of luck of the draw. It's when you're thrown in a room together, is that chemistry there? No, can we pretend? But luckily for us, we just, we're all in a hole and covered in brownie batter. You just got to lay on top of each other oh, that's your foot? Cool, here's my elbow.
And it was in sequence. Everything that was in the hole was in sequence. So, so the fact that we didn't, the family, there's so much space between all the members of the family to begin with as well. So, and then as we got, the proximity got tighter and tighter as we were actually getting to know each other a little bit more.
True. Yeah.
Well, Michael, maybe you could tell me a little.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Michael, maybe you could tell me a little bit about life in the hole, so to speak. Like, you all are thrust into a pretty crazy emotional situation. It's a very physical kind of component of the film. You're all covered in dirt and mud, but it's fascinating psychologically to see how the three characters really adapt so quick to their new circumstances. So, what was it like shooting all of that material there?
It was. The dirt was made of coffee and cocoa.
It's like brownie batter, yeah.
It smelled good.
Kind of good to me. Like, after a while, I was like, I think I need another little tongue full of dirt. Also, what was strange is the interior of the hole was built. We couldn't go down in a hole just logistically. So, but it got to the point where, we would come to work and we would get progressively dirty the further along we were in the story, the further along we were in the days of that part of the shoot. And it got to the point where I was only comfortable when we were in the hole. I got so used to being in the hole and got so used to being dirty the way we were that's the only place where life really felt like it made sense.
It's like
you got to build your own bunker
or anything, but it was great. I mean, it was it required no imagining, I mean, it really felt like we were where we were pretending to be.
Well, there was 4 walls on the hole. I don't know, Pascal, I don't remember how many walls were able to be removed, but they closed us in there. And I mean, I wasn't claustrophobic. I don't think you guys were, but you know what I mean? Like, it's as he's saying, when we're in it, it's just like, that's all it is. That's all our senses are experiencing is the hole. So it was, I don't know, it wasn't too difficult to just exist.
Right. I will add that.
Oh, sorry, Pascal.
No, that I will add that my intention was to really put them in a hole, like ideally in an ideal world without limitations of budget and constraint. Like, we discussed it with all the actors that we wanted that isolation and we wanted them to feel the space and the 4 gray walls around them. But of course, because of practicalities, we couldn't. But it still had the illusion, like every time I walked in to give directions or instructions or light it or whatever, like you did feel the containment. So it definitely worked on a physical level.
Charlie, can you tell me a little bit more about your approach to John and bringing out all these different dimensions to him? It's interesting because you end up being, given the nature of the story, alone. You're on your own for a lot of it. And you managed to bring out so many different aspects of this person. Yeah,
I mean, I think John is a character that has a lot of different dimensions and a lot of different, going on with him. He's a very kind of distant person in that, he doesn't really understand how to talk with people. When he does, he's always a bit muted and he's not really showing his emotions. And I don't think he really understands other people either. So he has that, but also he just is not happy, at least at the start. He has all this stuff, like his dad gives him a drone at the start and he has a skateboard and he has this big house and everything, but he's just kind of lost, I think. And he doesn't really have anything to do. He's bored, not really a purpose. And so he thinks in order to get that, what he has to do is put his family in a hole. And he thinks that's going to give him something that he doesn't have. But what he ends up finding out is that it doesn't really. But I think what I just had to do playing John was trying to show as little emotions as I possibly could while also showing those emotions. Because he's very kind of blank-faced when he's seeing stuff. He kind of just takes it in and thinks about it, but he doesn't really always show it. So that was obviously a pretty big challenge, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, as we've discussed, the film doesn't tell you how to think about John, but I wonder what you hope people will take away from it, or maybe what it'll make people think about.
This
Yeah,
for me.
you
You go.
Oh no,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure everybody, and part of what was described earlier was what Taissa said, that it does have multiple possibilities, and that was my intention as well. That I think every time I hear a new interpretation of the film is equally as good as mine. So there's nothing to be said about that. So I appreciate that it does have this open end and multiple interpretations of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, you really can take it however you want. I mean, as for why he did it, I have my own interpretation, but obviously it's not necessarily the right one. But I always just thought, like, the reason he does what he does and puts his family in the hole is partly because he wants to have some sort of independence. And he's 13. I mean, a lot of kids when they're 13 do kind of have that feeling of just wanting to put their parents away somewhere, just get rid of their family so they could be on their own. And so he wants to have that sort of fun alone in the house where he, gets to eat whatever he wants, or drive a car, or just be around with friends, or just do any of that kind of boring stuff. So I think he doesn't really grasp what the levels of what he's doing are and how bad it really is. But he thinks he can kind of just get rid of his family for a while and be on his own and everything will be okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my interpretation of it.
Yeah. Well, that's unfortunately all the time we have, but this is a really terrific film. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And please, everyone who's tuning in, check out John in the Hole today at Deadline, or at Sundance, the virtual Sundance 2021 at 3 p.m. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye, Matt.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Matt.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.